Braille for Somali students. A new initiative brings Braille to schools for the visually impaired in Somalia.
Achieving food security in Nigeria, Vice President urges swift action to meet recommendations made at local and international dialogues.
Good news for rhinos. For the first time in 21 years, not one rhinoceros was poached within Kenya National Parkland last year, and Kenya's Wildlife Service has plans to sustain that progress.
Hello, thanks for tuning into the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories near and far. I'm Chamberlain Osoa, Channels Television here in Lagos. I'm joined by Vincent Makori from Voice of America in Washington.
Thanks, I'm Vincent Makori at the Voice of America. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Our broadcast still looks a little different because of the global pandemic, but we truly appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Chamberlain Oso in Lagos brings you that story.
As part of efforts in achieving food security in Nigeria, more funding from the federal government will be required. And that's according to the governor of Cross River State, Professor Ben Ayade, who was speaking at the Consolidatory National Dialogue on the United Nations Food System Summit, which was held in Abuja. Well, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, on his part, urged states to own and process and translate the recommendations of these dialogues into action. Our State House correspondent, Kayla Megwa, reports.
Rising insecurity and the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has put more strain on an already fragile food system in Nigeria.
Food systems vary by location, and our approaches must be rooted in local and regional realities, tailored accordingly.
It has taken 33 meetings across Nigeria to get to this national consolidatory dialogue, and it is unanimous. Reports from these dialogues state that Nigeria's food systems are not functioning optimally. However, the reports also provide possible solutions to the problem.
The pathway towards a significant transformation of the Nigerian food system requires smart partnership and strong political will. And then we also need to adopt a business model.
An estimated 2 million children in Nigeria suffer from severe acute malnutrition. 11% of children cannot meet the minimum acceptable diet. 2 in every 5 children have stunted growth, the highest figure coming from Kebbi State, with 7 in 10 children stunted. In children ages 6 to 59 months, 68% are anemic. The Vice President insists that the recommendations from this consolidated dialogue must be implemented.
Emerging a generation of adults who suffer arrested physical and mental development, and the social and economic burden on their families, on their communities, and on the nation. Imagine the implications of approximately 50% of Nigeria's population being at risk if we don't get it right. So it's now up to us from here on to own the process and be ready to translate the recommendations of these dialogues to prompt action.
There is, however, a challenge with the actual implementation of the recommendations.
If we take a state like Cross River State, where our income is far below our basic responsibility in terms of direct salaries and recorded expenditure, excessive provisions for agriculture becomes very challenging.
Ensuring food security in Nigeria will require more than an academic exercise. The conversation has to move from halls like this to actual action, especially at subnational level, with funding being at the heart of the situation. And all of this has to be done before the General Food Summit across the world, which will be holding later this year. Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
We're joined now by Ade Lawal, who is the president of the Center for Sustainable Agricultural Empowerment and also president of Agribusiness Management Program at the Lagos Business School. Thank you for joining us today on Africa 54.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, let's start with getting your thoughts on the general outlook of the agri industry in the country, most especially regarding food security.
Thank you so much. Agric industry in Nigeria has the largest potential to reducing poverty, hunger, and unemployment. However, the industry, of course, we all know that they are not using their potential. As you know, agric is wide. It's not just about farming, but the value chain still depends on the primary production, in which we have the land, and of course, we have the human. It's just for us to be able to put all these things together and do it the right way. So in my thoughts, I would say we, the government, the corporate bodies, and individuals, we need to see agric as a serious business. Just like the way we are doing other serious businesses, we want agric to also be the same way.
What practical steps would you recommend can be taken towards achieving this?
Yes, I will start with what is going on is now getting to a little of what we are looking at, because the states generally, we've not been making strategic moves towards agriculture, but opportunistic moves. Everybody is just looking at it that, okay, this is what is going on and we'll move into it without doing the right, putting the right strategies in place. For me, I will look at it that the state governments have a lot to do in encouraging the commercial farming, because we still need to get to commercial farming first. Then they have to look inward. What generally we know in Nigeria that our greatest problem is in farming is not even just the funding, it's the knowledge gap. And of course, a number of processes are being done to see whether one thing or the other can happen in this area, but it's so minute. And bridging this knowledge gap, in order to have the right information, right education, for you to be able to do proper agribusiness. And of course, for you to have the right attitude towards technology adoption is so key. And this is really not available.
Speaking about those improvements, now,
yes,
several challenges bedeviling that agric sector, particularly local production of foodstuff in the country. What would you suggest, and how do we leverage on those huge potentials, taking advantage of the value chain that exists?
When we look at some of the things we really need, we're expecting governments to give recognition, the needed recognition to agriculturals and the agricultural farmers, especially the producer of our foods. We need to see them being recognized. Definitely, we're expecting government to be able to make evidence-based policies evidence-based that will help in this sector. The enabling environment, we cannot say it enough. Security. When you look at it, that a lot of the smallholders, even the big others, they need inputs.
All right.
Mr.
Lara.
And that input.
Okay.
Really, yes, sir.
We do thank you. We'll have to anchor at that point. Mr. Adilawa, thank you very much indeed for your perspective.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Lawmakers in Botswana recently set up a committee to address a high and increasing rate of rape cases in the southern African country. They also plan to establish a sex offenders registry. However, campaigners like rape survivor Refilwe Mwoki says those actions don't go far enough. Mkondi Sidube reports from Gaborone.
Singer and activist Refilwe Mwoki took self-defense lessons after she was raped in 2017. Last year, her emotional wound was reopened when her little sister was also attacked.
Just after my little sister was raped, and it took me back there, I felt like it's a curse or something, but at the same time, I'm like, let me do something positive out of this.
Mwoki leads a Say No to Rape campaign in Botswana, where reported cases have soared in the last few years. Authorities note pandemic restrictions have increased gender-based violence, and this year announced a committee and sex offenders registry to address the problem. But activists say more than policies, they need action.
We've had inquiries in the past. There have been findings, but then there's never been implementation of those findings. And Botswana has signed and ratified some of the legal instruments, but they are not implementing. So that is the challenge that we're having as a country.
Botswana's rape survivors say police don't take their ordeal seriously, and cases often don't make it to court. To address those problems, authorities say they are piloting gender-based violence units at police stations and special courts to fast-track their cases.
Dedicated this song to prove you wrong.
That raises hope that the voices of survivors like Muki could finally be heard. Mkondi Dube for VOA News, Gaborone, Botswana.
An African woman, no means no, ain't gonna tell you twice. Ain't gonna tell you twice.
A Nigerian startup, Road Preppers, is helping individuals trying to get around Lagos, the nation's most populated city, with ease. Through its local chatbot named Lara, the average Nigerian can get detailed information and navigation to move around from point A to point B.
Getting around in a busy city like Lagos could sometimes be a daunting task. With over 20 million people living in the state, a large percentage of the population rely on public transport for their mobility, and it's not unusual to ask strangers for directions when commuting. It's also not unusual to get misleading directions and miss one's way. This team at Road Preppers saw the problem, and they sought to provide a solution to the challenge of transport navigation.
This is the map of Lagos. For each of these layers, you're seeing actually queries, interactivity happening in different places. So you can see someone asking for questions around the corridor here towards here. You can see all these whole connections. So it's quite a very busy city of people actually asking directions.
By using an artificial intelligence chatbot named Lara, Lagosians can now get public transport navigation with fare estimates for commercial buses. This way, they can plan, commute, and connect better on their trips.
So you can open up Lara from your home screen. It says, "Good morning, Sam. I would like to get to today. I would like to get to channels TV. I would like to confirm staff on current location. Yes." So it tells me walk to where Ikeja under bridge, allow social pride, or you do beggar, take a bus going to Ozo, pick it up and pick, find a way down to channel. All right, thank you, and I can read that.
Lara uses artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the direction layer to provide detailed navigation. And since she's a chatbot, it's just like chatting with a friend or family. But Lara's finesse doesn't mean the team didn't struggle at first to find the best business model.
Sometimes when you're pushing out a new product that's totally novel, it isn't like your bread and stew that people actually used to. There's a lot of onboarding that actually is required for the market. So that also requires that whole initial learning curve rather for users to move along with. So that's one challenge. I mean, there's also the usual challenges like policies and whatnot, infrastructures, funding as well too, because I mean that's one of the things we did have a lot of challenge with.
As the team at Road Preppers continue to improve on Lara's technology, the informal directions platform will enable commuters move around with ease and change the transportation experience of many.
It's time now for a short break, and as we do, we'll remind you to visit our website, channelstv.com, for news and programming around the clock. You can also find us at youtube.com/channelsweb. Still to come, is that a superhero on Egypt's north coast? Well, not really. It's the aquatic car. The makers say it's safer and more powerful than jet skis that came before it.
Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Somalia's Ministry of Education has for the first time introduced Braille in schools for the country's blind and visually impaired people. Mohamed Kahire reports from Mogadishu.
Hassan Manur and his classmates are doing last-minute studying before their final national examination next week. The students will be tested on Somalia's first Braille curriculum, developed by the Education Department for students with special needs.
I am looking forward to sit for my final examination, which will be in Braille system for the first time in our country, and I am hopeful to register an excellent performance during the results.
The federal government has a new policy to develop learning programs for students with special needs, and so far it has printed more than 8,600 books in 8 subjects as part of its new education plan.
We started the new project with 3 schools as a model, and then we will expand it to other regions in the country after the assessment and necessary modifications.
The students have reacted positively to the new learning system, but say other challenges remain, like the cost and lack of resources to help students reach their potential.
We have various challenges, including teachers who teach voluntarily in this school without payment, with no motivation, because most parents are poor and they can't afford school fees for their children. But that will not stop our efforts to educate them.
Officials say decades of violence in Somalia have ravaged its once touted education system, and it is still a long way from where it once was. But officials say helping students with special needs like Manur can no longer wait. Mohamed Kahir for VOA News in Mogadishu, Somalia.
Holidaymakers on Egypt's north coast might find a surprising addition to shoreline traffic this year. A number of sports cars whizzing across the surface of the Mediterranean. The more upmarket beaches have introduced this aquatic car in lieu of jet skis, which its Egyptian makers promise it's much safer than and packs a lot more punch.
While tourists usually enjoy beautiful sandy beaches and clear waters along the northern coast of Egypt, they're set up for an additional attraction this year with the launch of the first locally manufactured car-shaped vehicle that can drive over water. Manufactured by 3 friends, the vehicle is mainly produced using local material and by local talent, apart from the engine, which comes from Japan.
When I used to live outside Egypt, I wanted to do the project from abroad, from outside, and then bring it to Egypt. I then spoke to my friend, and we brainstormed and planned to manufacture this vehicle with the best resources from Egypt. We found really good resources in Egypt and manufactured it. As you can see, and thank God the product is all Egyptian. It was made by Egyptians with Egyptian materials. Only the engine is Japanese.
The friends have so far produced 12 vehicles and received many orders upon the reveal of the vehicle.
After producing the first video about the vehicle, I received a good number of orders. I have different models that are totally different from the model that will be part of our development.
Each vehicle takes 3 weeks to produce and is priced between 300,000 to 700,000 Egyptian pounds. The group of friends plan to further develop the vehicle by introducing new amphibian models and making it operate on land. They also aim to export to overseas markets.
Kenya's Wildlife Service says for the first time in 21 years, not a single rhinoceros was poached in the country's national parks in 2020. To maintain the progress, it is conducting the first ever wildlife census and placing mobile container housing in parks for rangers. Victoria Munga reports from Nairobi.
Kenya's Wildlife Service credits intensified surveillance for the drop in rhinoceros poaching cases to 0 last year, the lowest number in 2 decades. The agency says it's also taking measures to maintain the progress, such as conducting a wildlife census for the first time.
There's a new strategy in the entire KWS that we're focusing on housing for rangers. We are focusing on buying them new equipment. Be it the firearms, whatever they require, be it the uniforms, be it cold weather clothing, that they can be able to respond at all times.
In Nairobi National Park, rangers with the rhinoceros monitoring unit are being upgraded from old tents. Ranger Augustine Mtua says new container housing units will help them to get to work protecting rhinos much faster.
You have to wake up there in the morning, you cook their breakfast, then you just walk out, going direct to the patrol. Not as the earlier as we are doing, you come out of the tent, you go outside to fetch water somewhere, you can see the tank there, then you come back to the kitchen, start preparing. Oh, it takes a lot of time.
Kenya had over 2 million tourists visit in 2019. Most go to see its rare wildlife, like the critically endangered rhinos.
It's great that there's been no poaching. This park is very well protected, which I'd say other parks are not as well protected.
Poachers kill rhinos for their horns, which sell for up to $60,000 per kilogram in Asian markets as aphrodisiacs and status symbol. Poaching reduced Kenya's black rhino population by 97% from the 1960s to the 1990s, from more than 20,000 to just a few hundred. But conservation efforts helped Kenya's wild rhino population to recover to 1,200, some including the world's only 2 remaining northern white rhinos. Victoria Amunga for VOA News, Nairobi.
Well, and that's our show for today. You can find all the content, top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Channels Television has our last word from Lagos.
We look forward to bringing you another show next week. ChannelsTV.com is your source for news and other programming. I'm Chamberlain, so thank you for watching. Goodbye.